Welcome back, everybody. We're kicking off a new series this week. Many of the things we say to comfort and encourage each other aren't biblical at all, and saying them can actually do more harm than good. In this series, we're calling some of those things out and saying, hey, the Bible doesn't say that. This week, we're naming a big one. God won't give you more than you can handle. Well-meaning Christians give this advice to hurting, overwhelmed people all the time. The problem is, the Bible doesn't say that. There's a false perception out there that after you become a Christian, life gets easier. In some ways, that's true, but it's also not the whole story. Let's read from Matthew. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." Jesus promises his burden is light, but yes, life can still be very hard. In 1 Corinthians, Paul writes, "If you think you are standing strong, be careful not to fall. The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience, and God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, he will show you a way out so that you can endure." Following Jesus is incredible, but it's not easy. Not only will we face hard, heavy things, but we'll also be tempted. Paul tells us God won't let us be tempted beyond what we can bear, and he'll always provide us a way out. We don't have to give in, but don't confuse temptations with burdens. I think that's where we start to get the wrong idea. We're facing temptation whenever we've got a desire to do something unhealthy, something that isn't right. The temptation to sin can feel like a burden. But temptation isn't the same as pain and suffering or the weight we feel from sin or brokenness. God won't give us more temptation than we can bear. But remember, when it comes to burdens, those are never our job to handle. That's God's job. Phil gave us 3 ways to unpack the lie that God won't give us more than we can handle. First, human suffering is universal. In John 16, Jesus makes us a promise that here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. Second, God is faithful. And God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. Life isn't fair, but thankfully, God isn't either. Where we deserve death, we get eternal life. Where this world tears itself apart, God's working to bring it all back together. The very fact that you're saved is proof that God doesn't make things fair. He makes things right. Christians, please remember, God will absolutely allow you to have more than you can handle. But the difference between the way the world handles burdens and the way that we do is that as believers, we know God is with us. Sin and pain are everywhere, but that wasn't God's first plan for us. Our burdens are too much for us to handle. They're so heavy to bear precisely because we weren't born to carry them. But here's the key. Jesus was born to carry them. God doesn't protect us from all harm and pain, but he does promise to carry the weight of it for us. His yoke is easy and his burden is light. Life gives us more than we can handle, but it can never give us more than he can handle. And last, please remember, you are not alone. The enemy wants you to feel isolated, afraid, and overwhelmed. He wants you to believe you're a victim of your circumstances, because when you believe that, we're more likely to turn away from God, to believe he's the one to blame for our pain and trouble. But God designed you to live in community. You're not supposed to live life alone. Jesus never leaves you, and he wants you to lean into your relationships with others. Bad things happen to you, but they don't define you. God does. And he says you're safe, loved, and surrounded by a family to hold you up. Let's talk more as a group. When we believe the lie that God won't give us more than we can handle, we assume that carrying our burdens is our job, and God simply decides how much burden to deal out to each of us based on how much He thinks we can take. It's like a big, depressing mystery, figuring out why God gives some of us heavier crosses to bear than others. That doesn't sound like love. It doesn't make sense. Here's the deal. Jesus had a cross to bear, and it's finished. And when He talks about His disciples taking up their cross and following Him, He does not mean carrying the weight of pain, sin, sickness, and the world's brokenness like a burden on your back. Jesus has the exact opposite in mind for us when we take up our cross and follow Him. Let's read it again. He says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." Jesus is not looking at us, measuring up how much we can take and piling the weight up on our backs accordingly. He absorbs the full weight of our burdens and gives us rest. Rest. All the time. Rest that doesn't leave when life is hard. No more hustle, just rest. How do you feel right now? Is your soul at rest? If it's not, you're probably holding on to something Jesus wants to carry. It wears you down because you weren't born to carry it. It's God's job. Dallas Willard says you're a soul made by God, made for God, and made to need God, which means you were not made to be self-sufficient. We are children of God. Our burden is light. When something is heavy, we don't handle it. We surrender it. We take it out of our hands and put it on Jesus right away. That's how we should live. We aren't born to be self-sufficient, made to tough it out. We're made to be God-dependent. We're children. We're wired to need God and need each other all the time. God never asks us to handle anything on our own. Let's unpack that together.